NCP. Now we've got Abhishek Singhvi arguing for the NCP, for the Sharad Pawar camp of the NCP. I'll take you through what Abhishek Singhvi is saying. He says when you try to cover up something, your fraud shows. The entire argument on the other side is that the government acted wisely because he was shown a letter. The case before the court, Singhvi says, is a strange one. Both sides agree that a floor test is necessary, but they say a floor test but need not be held now. They're trying to dismiss the Supreme Court orders as template orders. Singhvi calls this a fraud on democracy of the worst kind. The Supreme Court asked a very simple question. Does even a single MLA say that, Mr. Pawar, we agree to support the BJP? Singhvi says they've submitted a list of signatures with no covering letter. This is a fraud on democracy. Cannot rely on signatures that were used to elect Ajit Pawar as CLP leader and to use the same letter as letter of support. There was no resolution, and that's important. If the NCP never passed a resolution saying they wanted to back BJP, can Ajit Pawar unilaterally do this? The governor can't turn a blind eye saying that there is no covering letter or resolution. So you've got signatures, sir, no covering letter, no resolution. And that's the point that Abhishek Singhvi is making, that if there's no resolution, no letter, how do you believe that this signature that you've come with is actually to support the BJP to form the government?
Rahul, that's precisely the point that was made yesterday also, that the letter has been misused. It was for some other purpose and it was given as a letter of support to the BJP to form the government. Now the whole difficulty, Rahul, appears is once they have the numbers of 170 what they claim by the BJP alliance with the NCP, this sole candidate of Ajit Pawar, why are they hesitating from going for a floor test? Why do they require more number of days? I think that the entire argument is a hollow argument made before the apex court.
No, but that let the Supreme Court decide that. We will know soon what the Supreme Court says.
It's a pertinent question that he raises. If you have the numbers, why do you want more time?
So I think the point that Maninder Singh is making, the point that the Solicitor General made is, give it some time. What's the hurry? What will change in 4 days?
No, you haven't given any time.
No, so
thus far there is no time being given.
He referred to 4 days. He says after 4 days it can be done. Let the governor decide. That's the point that. So the Supreme Court can also do this. The Supreme Court can say, okay, let the governor decide when he wants to do the floor test and let him come back to us and tell us when he'll do it. Or the Supreme Court can say within 24 hours or within 48 hours, that's when you'll do the floor test.
But Rahul, there's been a precedent both in Karnataka and Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh where they'd given a time frame of 24 hours and at maximum 48 hours.
The point that was made by Rohtagi was this is not the same as Yedurappa's case, because here you've got letters of support. Now, whether that is accepted as a letter of support or not is a different matter. You've got letters of support and nobody's saying the signs are fraud. Therefore, the governor legitimately had letters of support. He invited Fadnavis to form the government.
That means a mere signature on a plain piece of paper does not tantamount to supporting to an alliance partner. Because that doesn't have a covering letter, it neither has a resolution, nor that letter of support signed by the MLAs. Anywhere says on that printed format that it is meant for supporting the BJP to form a government in Maharashtra.
That's the point the Supreme Court needs to rule on. Singhvi now says the court should order an immediate floor test, appoint a pro tem speaker with the sole purpose of holding a floor test, accusing the BJP and Ajit Pawar of circumventing and nullifying the laid down procedure. Singhvi says, I have affidavits of 48 NCP, 56 Shiv Sena and 44 Congress MLAs. Rohtagi objects, saying cannot file these signatures before the court. The Supreme Court says issue before us is very limited. Both sides are expanding it too much. The moment you file these affidavits, we have to give time to the other side to reply. Singhvi quickly says, I will withdraw the application. I'm trying to shock the conscience of your lordships when I have 156 people claiming affidavits. 1 second, I lost that. When I have 156 people claiming affidavits, how can he claim that he's got the NCP support? Supreme Court says, please address us only on the issue of the floor test. The moment you expand the ambit of the arguments before us, we have to give time to the other side to reply. So Singhvi then says, appoint a pro tem speaker. His sole responsibility should be to hold a floor test, and the BJP is trying to circumvent the procedure. Majid Memon is there. He's an NCP MP. He's assisting Singhvi in the argument. He's obviously a very recognized lawyer as well. So that's the way the arguments are going in the Supreme Court at this moment. And that's a good point. Rohtaki jumped in at a good moment.
Yesterday, the petitioners have been demanding that we are limiting our arguments only to the floor test.
No, not necessarily. Singhvi tried to submit 156 signatures.
To show that we have that the majority is on
but
the side.
then, but the judge said something very important. The moment you do this, I'll have to give the other side
So
an
fine, they
opportunity to
withdraw
reply.
that argument if it doesn't go well with the bench, that they would need to give some extra time to file a reply to that application. So I'm say, what has actually happened, Rahul, is since yesterday, the demand of the petitioner has been to a limited extent to a time frame for the floor test, though the petition asked for more prayers also. In fact,
No, but I think it's now very clear that the judge is saying we're not getting into the issue of whether what the governor did was right or wrong. He's saying
that will
just
take a
address us.
considerable
The
time,
judge is also
that has
trying
to be argued.
narrow the focus of the argument, saying just deal with us on the issue of the floor test. So Singhvi then says the Supreme Court must order an immediate floor test. Rohtaki says, arguing for the BJP, that what's the hurry, let the governor do his job, let him decide when the floor test should happen. It's not as if we're saying there should be no floor test. But it's also interesting to see that the BJP is not okay with an immediate floor test. They're not saying they're not okay, they're saying let the governor decide. But ideally they should say that, let the floor test happen today, let it happen tomorrow, we'll find out who will win. That's not what they're saying at this moment. They're saying let the governor do his job. And Smriti Kopikar, the argument is give them more time so that the governor's writ prevails. Don't impose your will on the governor of Maharashtra. That's the argument Rohtaki is making. Smriti Kopikar.
There can be very, very smart legal arguments, and they are being made in the Supreme Court this morning. There is another kind of argument that we are seeing on the streets in Bombay, in Delhi, and all over the place. But if we just cut through the clutter, Rahul, it's very simple. On Saturday morning, Mr. Fadnavis and Mr. Ajit Pawar were sworn in as Chief Minister and the Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra. On Monday morning, the impression is that the BJP is running away from a floor test. If they did have the majority on Saturday morning, presumably why they were sworn in, why has the BJP been hesitant to show it on the floor of the House? And where is the date of 30th November coming from? I don't think the governor has set that date. How was this communicated? Where has this been set out? So the right thing for the BJP to have done was, this is our chief minister, this is our deputy chief minister now, and we are ready for a floor test today. I think what the arguments that have been made in the court and the action on the ground shows that the BJP is trying to run away from a floor test, and that is not a good signal for the BJP.
Argument their lawyers are making in court. The argument they're making is, of course we're ready for a floor test. We want to prove a majority on the floor of House, but let the governor decide when to do the floor test. What the governor did in terms of appointing Fadnavis was not illegal. Let the governor call the date and don't impose your will on the governor. That's the argument Rohtaki and Maninder Singh have made before the Supreme Court. We will know soon whether or not the Supreme Court accepts that. I'll take you further into what has happened. Singhvi says the floor test should be ordered through a pro tem speaker who's a temporary speaker who comes in for this purpose. The only agenda should be swearing in MLAs and an immediate floor test. Singhvi accuses that the BJP wants to delay. They say that after a pro tem speaker is done, let a regular speaker be appointed. That gives Ajit Pawar the opportunity to issue a whip and to try and disqualify MLAs. But can one MLA disqualify 53 others? That's again something which would be bizarre. He is technically, or was at that time, the CLP leader, but right now 53 on the other side. So can he issue a whip? That's what Singhvi is suggesting, and then try and disqualify the other, saying this is my whip.
Assuming for a moment, let's be a devil's advocate, and assuming for a moment he issues a whip also, that doesn't disqualify the other 53, and neither disqualifies him also. If he is accepted as the leader of the legislative party in the assembly, even if he issues whip, it can't disqualify the other 53 at all.
They will still have, they're still entitled to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. The Solicitor General, Tushar Mehta, says the NCP has submitted a letter to the governor that we've withdrawn Ajit Pawar as the leader of the legislature party. That letter has 12 MLA signatures missing. So how is he saying anything? But at least Rohtaki is also accepting that only 12 names are missing. Singhvi there says everything can be proven on the floor of the House. I'm happy to prove on the floor of the House. Let the argument take place over there. That's the thrust of the conversation. So far, the Supreme Court's narrowed this down very clearly to the issue of a floor test. Will the Supreme Court pick the date of the floor test? Will the governor be allowed to pick the date of the floor test? The Supreme Court says, what are the conditions you're asking for? Singhvi says, I'm pointing out core requirements for a fair floor test. Singhvi points to precedent orders where, like in Karnataka, the Supreme Court laid down orders, videography, no secret ballot, an open ballot, numbers would be counted. Justice Ramana says, we know what orders we passed. Singhvi says, the court should ask to itself, why do all these orders have a 24-hour period and not 48-hour period? You know what, as we do this commentary, it's a lot of fun for us. As journalists, wouldn't it be so much better if, like is the case in the United States, you can actually have a live feed coming from the Supreme Court? You know, it'll just make our life, we're just talking non-stop. Then we can just sit back, have some coffee, and allow for the Supreme Court round. You'll also get to see the likes of Singhvi, Rohtagi in action, and there'll be all this theatrics like we see in Parliament. You'll actually get to hear what they're saying, like with the American president's impeachment hearings, Javed.
Absolutely.
And then we can all sit back, get a cappuccino, listen to what's happening over there instead of doing this live moment-by-moment commentary where we're essentially just encapsulating what's happening in the court.
I think, Rahul, to strengthen democracy if in times to come, I think the feeds not only from the apex court, from all the courts needs to come, because that increases the accountability of both the judiciary also. I think that's a step forward in the right direction. And probably in some time, and that time may be very near, that you might be seeing all the live feeds, what happens in the state legislatures and even in the parliament, both in the upper and the lower house. So I'm sure time is very near where you'll have a live feed from all the courts.
Okay, interesting exchange taking place. Rohtagi and Singhvi now sparring. Rohtagi is saying, how can you have separate lawyers for the petitioners? The Solicitor General says, you know, they're not even able to agree on a common counsel. How will they run the government? That's a different matter. So, interesting exchanges, Ankit, in the Supreme Court. This one was especially interesting. The Solicitor General saying if they don't have a common counsel, how will they agree upon anything? But I think the crux of the argument right now seems to be, will a Supreme Court order a floor test at a particular date, or will it happen on a date of the governor's choosing? Ankit.
Well, Rahul, you know, as we were discussing it earlier, Mukul Rohatgi, in fact, pressing for more time, and one of their tactic, and which is what the Supreme Court judges have been saying to both the sides, that limit your argument to the floor test, because you all are expanding the scope of this argument, and then if we go by procedure, if we allow these arguments to take place, it is going to drag on. Interestingly, the Supreme Court has asked Abhishek Manu Singhvi, what conditions are you asking for? Abhishek Manu Singhvi replying to that says, I'm pointing out the core requirement is a floor test, a fair floor test. Singhvi is also pointing out to the precedent court orders. You know, as we were discussing it earlier, procedure versus precedent. Justice Ramana said, we know that orders we have passed. Singhvi said the court should ask itself, why do all these orders have a 24-hour period and not a 48-hour period? So once again, stressing on the fact that it should be only 24 hours that the floor test should take place. In fact, the Solicitor General also says, on a lighter note, side, they are unable to agree even on a common counsel, the argument that you were making. But this is in jest. But the fact remains that the Congress party is once again saying that we also agree that there should be a floor test. The other side, the Solicitor General, Mukul Rohatgi, they also agree there should be a floor test. Then what is the need for a delay? Whether Ajit Pawar is a legitimate leader or not, all that can be, in fact, answered on the floor of the House. But the court should go by precedents and order a floor test within 24 hours.
Interesting. Now the only point that really remains to be decided is, will the Supreme Court determine the date of the floor test? In the meanwhile, as I said, in Parliament, we heard a brief intervention from Rahul Gandhi. Soon after that, Parliament was adjourned. The Congress is alleging that MPs of the opposition were manhandled by marshals. Fortunately, they've got rid of those horrendous caps, because those were caps marshals ought not to be wearing, because those were caps that army generals wear. Totally inappropriate for marshals to be wearing those. The likes of General VP Malik, former Chief of the Army Staff, raising that issue in public, after which that cap was removed just as well. Better sense prevailing on that issue. Rahul Gandhi made a brief intervention in Parliament. I want to show you what he said.
स्पीकर महोदय, मैं आज यहाँ सवाल पूछने आया था, मगर मेरे सवाल पूछने का आज कोई मतलब ही नहीं है, क्योंकि महाराष्ट्र में लोकतंत्र की हत्या हुई है, लोकतंत्र की हत्या हुई है, तो मेरे सवाल पूछने का कोई मतलब नहीं है आज। धन्यवाद।
He says he came to ask a question. He seems to have a bit of a tan now, Javed, and at least he's in parliament, showing
Rahul,
up.
You've got some special lens.
No, he's got a tan. You can't see the tan.
It's very diff- no, I don't.
Let's play it out again. I'll show you the tan. It's true, he's got a tan. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a tan, but the guy's got a tan, and he's just spoken in parliament,
That shows he's more on streets, you know.
which is fine. I mean, he can be wherever he wants to
Prime
be.
Minister has more of a tan. if you
My,
like.
my argument really is just this. Either he's in charge or he's not. And if he withdraws, he should withdraw fully. The Congress should have a full-time president.
I mean, why should we prescribe what you do? He's every right to continue as an MP.
No, of course he should continue as an MP, but I'm saying make somebody fully in charge of the Congress party, not as
you
an
have a
interim
Congress
president. As an
you have-
interim president.
Yeah,
Let
that's
the
fine.
Congress have a proper
They
president.
will have an election after the assembly.
The reality though is, and this you can't take away from, if after all of this, the Congress, the NCP and the Sena are able to form a government, it will show that the old guard, in the manner in which they maneuvered this, because the BJP upped the stakes, the old guard in the manner in which they maneuvered it, was able to hold out against a very firm, concerted onslaught and ensure that the opposition could
Yeah,
form a
because
government.
there were very experienced hands at play. One was Mr. Sharad Pawar, then from the Congress side there was Mr. Ahmed Patel, Khadge, Mr. Venugopal. The point that I was making earlier, you need all kinds of, in a team you need a fast bowler, a spinner and a wicket keeper. You know, it's not just you can play 5 fast bowlers and not have anybody else. So the Congress needs to realize that it takes all kinds to make a team work. It can't be just be youngsters, or it can't just be oldies at the expense of youngsters. It has to be a combination of both. The biggest disservice the Congress has done to itself is to try and perpetuate this youngsters versus oldies